Education is a social good in cultivating people, developing people's intelligence, improving people's skills, and shaping people's thoughts, as it improves individuals' abilities to understand, utilize, and transform the world, thus promoting social economic development and reducing inequality. According to a research, over 110 countries are suffering from lack of rural education. In this regard, education in underdeveloped countries has grown rapidly, and the global gap in educational development continues to narrow. Nevertheless, more than 200 million school-age children worldwide are still out of school. In countries around the world attach great importance to educational development, and the United Nations include educational development as an important element in the Millennium Development Goals, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. As the saying goes, with education, the world can be changed. It is against this backdrop that we will be beaming our searchlight on Saturday Discourse tonight. With me in the studio will be an education analyst, Mr. Samuel Achimugu, the deputy lead plane, to do justice to the topic on the importance of rural education. I am Abdullah Hajia, your uncle. To stay with us. We'll be right back shortly. Now, let's begin with the news reports. The federal government has dismissed reports circulating in some media outlets claiming that junior secondary school JSS and CSS have been scrapped. Zenred Digmon reports.
We're just planning on lengthening the number of years that's compulsory from 9 years to 12 years. And before we even get to final decision on this, we will be having a lot of stakeholder engagement.
The Minister of Education setting the record straight, emphasizing that if adopted, the policy would make the entire 12 years of basic education free and compulsory, ultimately enhancing student learning and development.
For school-based management.
In a related development, the minister unveils the reviewed guidelines for the operations of school-based management committees in federal unity colleges across Nigeria. This revision is aimed at strengthening bottom-up education planning and management.
Our membership of the SPMC are really old and are not conversant with the 21st century education management and of course operations of the school.
This collaborative framework is vital for tackling the issues faced by secondary schools in Nigeria, such as poor infrastructure, resource shortages, and lack of community involvement.
We want your school to be managed, operated at your own level, with collaboration from all stakeholders in your community. That's the best way we think we can get better results, we can get you educated in a very nice, in a better way, we can create the most enabling environment for you to go to school.
The minister urges all committees to diligently execute their roles in accordance with the stipulated guidelines. In Abuja, Zenred Digmon, NTA News.
On Saturday Discourse tonight, we will be talking about the importance of rural education, and my guest is here with me. But before we go to my guest, let's get to hear what Nigerians are saying there with views from Adisa Godin Ebune.
That we can have a literate Nigeria moving from the current 60% literacy level, is rural literacy. And if we take it at that level, there is a federal government parastatal that is meant to handle that. If they aggressively are able to handle that, following up with the state government, we can liberate Nigeria. There are a lot of women in the villages. There are a lot of old men in the villages who need to understand that education is important. It's not because they need it to get white-collar or blue-collar jobs, but so that they can know how to read and write and be informed about what is happening in the world.
The children who are domiciled in the rural area, when given an opportunity tend to do better than those that are even in the cities. So it's important for the government to begin to look inwards on how to be able to give opportunities to all these people that do not have the opportunity. So I believe we need to look at the prototype of what happened in the 60s and the 70s. If there is anywhere we can dust it and then form a nexus between what is happening today, then there will be a lot of gains.
What we are seeing in the Federal Capital Territory is simply a small screen. What you find in the city, 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers outside the city, is something completely different. What we see of the city is just within the capital here. When you move about 5 kilometers in the straight line, you see the squalor. You will find out that most of the schools or the primary schools in those locations do not even have seats. They do not have teachers. You find a whole primary school with just about 2 teachers.
Well captured there, the views of Nigerians on our topic of discussion. And there we shall be taking the discussion, back to the studio from the streets. And I have uh, an education analyst and deputy lead of Partnership for Learning for All in Nigeria, and known as PLAN. I have Mr. Samuel Achimogu. Thank you for joining us on Saturday Discourse.
Thank you very much, sir.
And we must commend you for what you're doing out there.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's begin by understanding what you do before we narrow it down to, interventions and some of the, questions we have for you.
Thank you. So for us, we're really interested in promoting education across Nigeria. We're primarily working in Kano, Kaduna, and Jigawa, where we're trying to improve foundational literacy and numeracy in schools and in the areas, and also working with the federal government to kind of improve the institutional framework around education.
All right, let's bring it down to what we're discussing, rural education. So I don't know if your reach and intervention also covers what we're talking about.
Yes, I think for us, our intervention covers areas both in the urban and also rural. In some of the local governments that we actually work in, they are rural interventions. So I'm more than very, very happy to kind of discuss what we've been doing in those areas.
Okay, well, most often there is this dichotomy between what you get, the quality of education you get in the urban centers and the rural area. Are we also looking at such situations so that we bridge the gap?
Yes, I think there are situations that we're looking at, and there are particular issues around that. But I think both the government of Nigeria and also a lot of donor programs like myself are looking at initiatives to support government to kind of bridge the gap. There are kind of critical issues around that sometimes is really, really hard to do that. I think part of that is around funding. Also, part of that is around human resources for education. Most teachers prefer to work in the urban center for reasons, for more economic reasons than rural. So these are things that we're also working with government to try and improve in that sense.
Okay, well, another issue you would agree in which one of our respondents there earlier alluded to is the issue of we still see instances or cases of some pupils or students sitting on the bare floor to learn. That is not acceptable.
I think we definitely have an issue around infrastructural development in the areas we live in. But I think from a personal point of view, we kind of do agree that learning can almost take place anywhere. And so I do know that in terms of what are the key issues around rural education, infrastructure is definitely something around that. And I think the government itself is trying to kind of fund that. But I think the issue of funding is such that the government alone can't do it. And so there is need for us as Nigerians to think about all the alternatives around funding education, particularly around the area of maybe community schools or public-private partnership to be able to do that. But I do agree that we do have poor infrastructure, and that's one of the reasons that we're having challenges with rural education.
Okay, does your intervention also, touch on curriculum? Because most often there is this argument out there that there is so much emphasis on the theoretical aspect of learning rather than probably more emphasis on the practical, where you develop skills, talents, and builds future entrepreneurs?
So I think for us, what is important, particularly what we see, which is the depth and issues we have in Nigeria, is around even foundational literacy here. If you go around, there are lots of children in schools that can't probably read or write. And so for us, even getting the foundations right is really important. And we know that if we get the foundations right, you're able to kind of move up and actually go through the motions and become good technicians, good engineers, good doctors, good lawyers. And what we're primarily trying to do as for us right now is to ensure that children are able to get the foundations right, especially in the rural areas, either through, for particularly in the north where Sangaya education is important, working with the curriculum in terms of even in those Sangaya schools to be able to put literacy and numeracy in there, even in areas like where you have had to reach and you have mobile schools. So you have what you have community learning centers where people can come and learn. So, but we're also working with the government on NERDC as they're trying to work in bringing in the accelerated basic education curriculum, which would also help children that are out of school and some that are slightly overaged in that sense.
I know most often what you do, you try to measure progress. So from the states that you intervene in so far, what are the signs? What are the figures like? Are there changes in what we're trying to achieve in trying to improve the situation?
Yes, there are real changes. For instance, what we've noticed is that even in areas where interventions are happening, at least 40%, averagely, at least 40% of the children are moving at one level. So you do have, in terms of like literacy, there's kind of being able to identify a word, being able to read a sentence, and we're seeing that the interventions are working. I must state that our interventions are in the mother tongue. And so we're teaching children how to read and write in the mother tongue. And our experience is that once children are able to read and write, particularly in the mother tongue, transiting to other languages becomes quite easier. And so we're seeing that particularly in the three states that we're doing, children are grabbing, people are able to read, and also other interventions like accelerated learning, we're finding it bringing very, very good dividends.
Most interventions from probably local, international organizations are usually timed. I don't know if yours is timed and what happens at the end of probably the intervention period.
I think for us, that's why sustainability is important. Whatever work we're doing, we always work with the governments of where we are staying. And so a lot of the work we're doing is particularly for government in the government of Nigeria through the subnational government and the federal government to find good models of what they can carry on and put their funding into. And we ensure that our funding is not so expensive, for instance, so that governments can replicate after our program ends. And so those models and all the kind of research and the things that we've learned, we always ensure that government is with us. A lot of the work we also do is to also train government on how to ensure sustainability of the interventions that we are carrying out.
You mentioned state government. What about the local government? They also have schools.
Yes. So a lot of the work we do work is through the local government and also the state government. So even within the local governments, there's a lot of interactions with the education secretaries and the chairman. And we are still having conversations around that on how, particularly with the new local government autonomy, looking at innovative ways whereby we can support the government to be able to support those schools, and particularly around education finance. So for us, it's not just the in-school activities, but it's also the support system, which is around Ministry of Education, the SUBEBs and UBEC, and how that can also ensure that we have sustainable education in the areas.
Okay, well, I don't know what you do. Are you also factoring what government has started already talking about the feeding of the school pupils in school, and then probably do you supply learning materials?
So in terms of feeding, we're not supporting that directly, but we are working with people who are looking around the research and trying to see how it could actually help. And so we're actually working on that. But in terms of for us, we are supplying textbooks and in some cases even exercise books, pencils, and other learning materials to schools. For instance, in the local governments in Jigawa, we're in around 8 local governments, Kano 4 local governments, and in Kaduna 6 local governments. And in those schools, we supplied textbooks to all the children in those schools, both in Hausa literacy and Hausa numeracy, and some other textbooks. And for us, we find that that is one of the things that would help increase learning outcomes for children in this area.
Okay, another important issue I want us to talk about is the issue of, despite efforts of governments at all levels, organizations like yours also supporting, we still have issues or cases of out-of-school children. How can we best tackle such?
I think the case of out-of-school children, I think there are areas which the government is trying to put in a lot of investment in. I think one of the things that we really need to understand is how we can holistically kind of tackle that. And sometimes one of the things I think the government is quite proud of and which we supported is the classification of out-of-school children, particularly definitions of education and who's in education and who's not. And so even with that now, part of it is also looking at ways whereby you can reach out-of-school children. And for us, particularly around having the right kind of curriculum, whereby kids would be able to, so for instance, now children in Sangaya schools sometimes are not classified as children that are in school. So the classification has been done by the meeting that was attended last year or the year before UNESCO, but it's now how to have other curriculums in those Sangaya schools and to ensure that these children are getting foundational literacy. And as I also mentioned, the government is also trying to do a lot in trying to bring curriculums around accelerated basic education so that children who have not been in school for a while would be able to catch up quite quickly and have the required skills to move on to have kind of very successful careers.
Before we let you go, can you respond to probably some of the challenges you feel militating against a smooth, delivery of some of these, beautiful ideas or initiatives that you're putting forward?
I think it goes without saying, I think resources, funding is a big issue for us in the country, and how we can kind of mobilize resources for education innovatively. I think there's an over-reliance on government, and I think there's what kind of, even within communities, we can kind of do. I think also when we think about also, and I think we want teachers, I think, being able to get good quality teachers and having the right incentives to ensure that you have teachers that are able to go to the rural areas is very, very important. And that includes kind of having them the right education, right facilities, and other amenities. So if we can do some of these things, I can guarantee you that in no distant time, we would have very good access to the rural areas, and motivation will come for kids to be brought back into school.
Most thank you very, very profusely, Mr. Samuel Chimugu, Deputy Lead Plain, as well as Education Analyst, for coming to share your thoughts with us on the program Saturday Discourse. We wish you well in your future endeavors.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
All right, you're still watching Saturday Discourse. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, the program continues shortly.
Relive your delightful moments via a telecast. Tell the world what gave you your happiness or pains, and for the how, where, and why. Share your joys of coronation, chieftaincy orders, engagement parties, traditional wedding ceremonies, weddings fatiha, nikah, naming ceremony, church programs, housewarming, inaugurations, award nights, school and social events, or moments of grief like burial ceremonies with many others. Don't let your events pass and your story not be told on Memories every Saturday, 7:30 p.m. on this station. Memories, making your events memorable.
Thank you for staying tuned. Now, the issue came to play in Karu, Nasarawa State, when staff of the Nasarawa State Waste Management and Sanitation Authority, NASWAMSA, honored their former boss, who was elected recently as Karu local government chairman, Barrister Aliyu Abubakar Madaki, with a surprise birthday celebration. Blessing and Flani brings us details.
Having impacted his former staff positively with good leadership qualities, staff of Nasarawa State Waste Management and Sanitation Authority (NASWAMSA) are obviously still feeling the impact, and in return honored their former boss, who is the current chairman, Karu local government area, with a surprise birthday celebration.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
Naswamsa staff described the celebrant, Barrister Aliu Abubakar Madaki, as a father, mentor and leader par excellence whose legacies will not be forgotten in a hurry.
I pray that the Lord will keep him and he will keep on going on more than his age mate. That is my earnest prayers towards him.
We're also hoping that at the end of his tenure, history will judge him to be one of the best LGA chairman Karo has ever had.
Friends and well-wishers showered encomium on the celebrant with prayers for greater years ahead and life longevity.
He's a wonderful person, and my wish for him is he succeeds and ends well.
He's a good man, and that's why I said when the righteous are on throne, the people rejoice.
All the wishes and encomium that were showered on him were highly realistic. He's one person that is a team player that takes people at heart and plays the role of a father while at the workplace.
Apparently overwhelmed with joy, the man of the moment expressed gratitude.
This one is wonderful. I am happy and I wish Allah will reward them. Amen. Thank you.
It is expected that the same leadership qualities exhibited in Naswamsa by Barrister Aliu Abubakar Madaki will be replicated in Karu Local Government Council. Blessing Fulani, NTA News.
Let's now join Sandra Keme for Weekly News Wrap.
This is Weekly News Wrap, a segment of the news that brings you highlights of stories that made headlines within the week. I am Sandra Akeme. Now, in the week under review, we brought to you the importance of reading for promoting literacy and storytelling, to foster a love for reading and improve pronunciation skills. The FCT Education Resource Center recently brought together students, academics, and stakeholders to celebrate World Read Aloud Day.
Definitely, I believe that it will bring us back to the library.
Similarly, T.Y. Buratai Literary Initiative also brought children from various schools together for a fun reading exercise as they dove into two exciting books. In another development, the Federal Capital Territory Administration declared zero tolerance for fake hospitals in the territory. This announcement came after a health facility in Kapwe Gaube community was shut down by the Private Health Establishment Registration and Monitoring Committee. The facility, Dada's Clinic and Maternity, was found to be operating under registration and conducting medical procedures in a rented apartment unfit for healthcare services. Also, the FCT Executive Council approved some contracts geared towards realizing enhancing security architecture of the city center and satellite towns. This came to the fore at the first ESCO meeting in 2025, chaired by the FCT Minister Yesom Wike. And it is the dawn of another election in the Federal Capital Territory as the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, releases election timetable and guidelines ahead of the 2026 area councils election, which stakeholders reacted to the development. And lastly, the global community came together to raise awareness, promote education, and mobilize action against cancer, which is the second leading cause of death worldwide, affecting millions of people regardless of age, gender, or socioeconomic status. This year's theme, United by Unique, emphasized on the importance of people-centered care, recognizing that every individual's experience with cancer is unique. That's all we can take for this week's segment. Bye for now. I am Sandra Akeme.
Thank you, Sandra, with that weekly news wrap. Now, before we go, we'll learn that Eric Chelle, the Super Eagles coach, has submitted a 21-man list squad to execute the must-win match against Rwanda in the World Cup qualifiers. As Eric Chelle has also visited some of the Super Eagles players to be able to see what they're doing and to keep them in shape. Well, on that note, we end the Saturday Discourse for this week. Do join us same time, same station for another interesting topic and episode. I am Abdullah Haitia. Good evening.